Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am Sana Devan from the Startup India team at Invest India, and I would like to welcome all of you to a webinar, Unlocking the Potential of Entrepreneurship Cells in Universities. Through this webinar, we want to shed light on the importance of entrepreneurship cells and student-led entrepreneurship clubs in cultivating the startup culture and discussing best practices for initiating such cells and clubs in a university. So just to give some background, according to a study of more than 150 university incubators and almost 900 companies, university incubated businesses created more jobs and generated more sales than those incubated elsewhere. In fact, in developed ecosystems such as the United States, the chances of student entrepreneurs succeeding are more likely if the idea is launched within the premises of a university and if they utilize the resources available on campus. When we talk about India, the startup culture and infrastructure is still developing in most of the universities. We are yet to see the creation and growth of university e-cells and incubators in India. However, this is not to say that the number of student startups is not on the rise. Again, just to sum it up, entrepreneurship has the capacity to not only start companies, but also to enable students to think creatively and ambitiously. And I think it is very important to be included in the university curriculum. With this context, I'd like to start off by introducing our esteemed panel members for today. We have with us Ms. Karen Wilson. She is the founder of GV Partners and an expert on innovation, entrepreneurship, finance, and impact measurement, working with private sector firms, international organizations, foundations, and universities. She's also an associate fellow at the SED Business School at Oxford University and a visiting lecturer at the Stockholm School of Economics. She's also served on a number of boards and coached numerous startups. She is a board member of the European Venture Philanthropy Association and serves on the Harvard Business School Impact Investment Alumni Steering Committee. We're extremely delighted to have you with us today. Next up, we have Dr. Sunil Shukla. He is the Director General of Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India. He has over 20 years experience in entrepreneurship education, research, and institution building. He's been involved in promoting entrepreneurship at national and international levels. As a visiting faculty, he's also been teaching entrepreneurship at top-ranking institutions, including IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Udaipur. Thank you, Dr. Shukla, for being with us here today. We also have Mr. Kangson Lee. He is the Assistant Professor of Social Research and Public Policy at NYU Abu Dhabi. His teaching interests include economic sociology, organizations, entrepreneurship, social networks, and creative industries. His current research examines transnational status dynamics and organizational cognition between local and global markets, concentrating on fields that experience a rapid environmental shift. His research has also been supported through Northwestern University in Illinois. We're glad to have you today with us. And of course, we have Mr. Bala Visa. He is a professor of entrepreneurship at INSEAD. His research focuses on the people side of entrepreneurship, such as structuring effective venture teams, building entrepreneurial networks, and enhancing corporate governance, particularly in emerging economies. Prior to finishing his doctoral studies at London Business School, Professor was involved in setting up and growing new businesses for Unilever in India. Currently, he is directing INSEAD Leadership Program for Senior Executives India and the Certificate in Leadership Effectiveness. Once again, thank you, Mr. Visa, and everybody for joining us today. We'd like to start off by understanding our panel's broad views and thoughts on how they think that entrepreneurship cells can be leveraged to create a startup culture in universities and colleges. Let's start with Dr. Sunil Shukla.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Sana. Let me compliment Startup India and Investment India for taking up this very, very relevant topic. I remember during last 1 year of pandemic specifically, I would have addressed several webinars, but none of these webinars touch the topic like this. And this directly is concerned with our students and educational institutions. So the first opening remark is that it's absolutely necessary. Let me quote a research study in which I was the principal investigator, and it was for Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, Government of India. We wanted to know that what are entry barriers to entrepreneurship? Why today's youth shy away from entering an entrepreneurial career? And this was a national study interviewing about 1,625 mostly college-going students, those who were in the final year and on the verge of selecting their career, and also young employees from 4 zones of the country: east, west, north, south, industrially, entrepreneurially advanced like Gujarat and Karnataka, and not so advanced like Odisha and Uttar Pradesh. And when we asked them, the basic question was that after the current study, what are you planning to do? What are your career choices? And from among students, just about 14%, 14.2% precisely, they had career plans pertaining to entrepreneurship over next few years, like doing something of their own or being a freelance consultant. In case of young employees having work experience, the figure was about 26%. But overall, for both the sample size respondents, it was about 19.2. Remaining 81%, they had no plans of entering into any entrepreneurial career. So entrepreneurship continues to be one of the last career options, and we wanted to know that what could be the reason. And after examining several factors, we were able to identify 4 broader factors, and we called them entry barriers. And these were, number one, this mindset that I'm simply not interested in entrepreneurship. I am happy wherever I am. The second one was that I'm interested, but would like to wait for some more time before taking a plunge in entrepreneurship. The third was lack of confidence because of ignorance about procedures, formalities, business opportunities. And the fourth, which was again very, very important, the disapproval of family friends. We wanted to know more about these people. And we asked them that suppose some of your apprehensions are taken care of, would you be willing to consider your career options in favor of entrepreneurship? And if so, what are your major apprehensions? And the hoping number of about 58%, and mind you, this is the potential of likely entrepreneurs on campuses. 58% of originally 81%, they said that yes, we are willing to reconsider our career option for entrepreneurship if we are helped for 3 things, and in the order: finance, business idea, and training for business and management. And we concluded that entrepreneurship is a mindset. It's a state of mind. Just by telling them that we would be willing to take care of some of your apprehensions, how many of you would be reconsidering? Large number of. So this is the potential which is untapped on the campuses, and which can be converted. Large number of them could be converted or inspired to pursue entrepreneurship. And based on that, we made one of the recommendations to open EBDCs on campuses, educational premises, that is entrepreneurship and business development cells. Until then, mostly EDCs, entrepreneurship development cells, were being established by Department of Science and Technology, National Science Technology Entrepreneurship Development Board. And now there is a spurt. In recent time, you might have seen that UGC has been supporting, AICT has been supporting. So a lot of institutions have been supporting. And I believe that most of the institutions today, either they have already set up some sort of entrepreneurship related activities, whether in the structured form of EDC or new gen IEDC, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development Cell, or EBDC, or at least some of the activities that they have. And thereby they are able to give a focused view on various attempts which their alumni, their students have been taking on entrepreneurship, like organizing expert lectures, organizing technology demonstrations, elevator pitches, organizing investor summits, organizing a startup summit or a hackathon kind of thing. So I believe my take is that entrepreneurship development cell is necessary. They can help not only the students, they can connect alumni with the industry. They will be able to identify the opportunities available in the area. They will be able to connect with the relevant government schemes, and this is certainly is required. So I would like to stop here and look for my other distinguished panelists, and delighted to offer any questions if are asked. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, Dr. Shukla. Thank you so much. Next up, we can have Ms. Wilson. Just again, on utilizing the potential of East to promote entrepreneurship.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Invest India and Startup India, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. And I just wanted to start by saying that universities play such an important role in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in many, many ways. So I'm really delighted to be part of this discussion. I wanted to come back to what Dr. Shukla said about mindset. I think that's really critical. Obviously at the university, in terms of engaging students, it's really raising awareness of students about entrepreneurship as an opportunity for them, not just for others, helping to change their mindset. There are some people that inherently are entrepreneurial, they have entrepreneurial characteristics, and they might become entrepreneurs anyway. But there are a large portion of the student population that would have the ability, but for some of the barriers that Dr. Shukla mentioned, they don't think that they can, or they don't think it's the right time, or they're discouraged from doing that. So again, the role that the university can play is so important in terms of learning, training, providing the kind of culture, and probably most importantly, and this is where these entrepreneurship student cells come into play, is providing a safe place for students to experiment and learn and work together without the fear of failure, because they can get a taste of what it's like. It's sort of action learning where they can go through the process and they can learn more about entrepreneurship. They can work with other people. They can ask the stupid questions. They can make the mistakes. And that's really, really important. So providing this safe space and creating these kind of cells and initiatives, promoting or enabling these student efforts and student cells is important, but the university has to make room for that. So the university itself needs to have a commitment to entrepreneurship from the top, hopefully, but also there need to be champions within the university that help facilitate that. So you need a combination of both. You need the faculty champions, you need the student champions, and you need the commitment from the top. And then there is a lot that can be done in terms of the curriculum and providing the training in the curriculum, but also the extracurricular, which is again where these entrepreneurial cells come into play, providing these kind of opportunities and others for students to really engage with companies, with startups, to get this hands-on practice and engagement and learning. And also, to have these investment opportunities, whether it's real or simulated, where they just can go through the process and learn by doing. So I think all of these factors are really important, but universities really are the key to entrepreneurship and to incubating and accelerating entrepreneurship at the local level and at the global level. I worked for many years with EFR, the European Foundation for Entrepreneurship Research, and we were working on building the entrepreneurship ecosystem across Europe. And we very quickly realized that you can go entrepreneur by entrepreneur, country by country, but actually you can have a multiplier effect if you focus on universities. And if you focus on training teachers who are training class after class of students, and if you help facilitate the experience for students, the learning for students, the opportunities for students, because they're the ones that become the future entrepreneurs. So I think these entrepreneurship cells and enabling students to take initiative, to experiment, to pilot, to learn, to build confidence is highly important. So again, I'm delighted to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wilson. Next, we'd like to hear from Mr. Vissa.
Hey, thanks a lot from INSEAD for everyone in Startup India for giving me an opportunity to come and share my ideas. Sana, thanks for moderating. Quick introduction about myself. My name is Bala Vissa. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship at INSEAD based in the Singapore campus. Been with INSEAD for a long time now. I research mainly the people side of entrepreneurship, so touching on all aspects of entrepreneurship, and I work with investors and entrepreneurs. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what we do at INSEAD, and then broaden out to pick up the thread on what my earlier panelists spoke about, because I think the kind of issues that Dr. Shukla pointed out, which is very, very interesting, and which Karen pointed out as well, I think I'm going to build on those comments. So very broadly at INSEAD, our definition of entrepreneurship is necessarily very broad. It's focused on innovation, building organizations, both for-profits and social enterprise, as well as turning around existing firms, rejuvenating family firms, buying out a firm and using it as a growth platform, corporate entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial finance, and things like that. So it's very broad. So the way I would put it is, in our minds, we think about entrepreneurship as something involving innovation and building organizations. Does not necessarily involve being on someone else's payroll, right? The interesting data for INSEAD alumni is about half of our alumni are entrepreneurs by this definition 5 years after graduating. Okay, so that's an interesting statistic, although right at the get-go after graduating, we have, the number of students who go and launch a new venture is much lower. In fact, I would say it's about probably it's a single-digit number. Right, so I want to come back to this because it's an important issue. And going back again to what Sunil talked about in terms of having a multidimensional approach, and Karen used these nice words of student champions, faculty champions, support from the top. It is super important, cannot emphasize that more. So again, at INSEAD, we have a multidimensional approach to cater to student demand for entrepreneurship. The first is the for-credit academic activity. So that is spearheaded by faculty with a suite of electives, and there's a capstone at the end and so on. But that academic electives and faculty is very important in order to have legitimacy within the system amongst professors and other instructors who teach students, right? So the academic part is important. As important is the non-academic or non-curricular stuff. And for that, we have a bunch of research centers around entrepreneurship, family business, private equity, and so on, that create linkages with practice and also are a nice platform for our alumni to contribute back to the home institution where they graduated from. So under the umbrella of these research centers and also student clubs, you have a bunch of activities like startup boot camps, a business venture competition, an entrepreneurship forum, matching for projects where companies want projects and they match up with students looking for projects, an entrepreneurship and residence program where we have mainly alumni, but also other friends of INSEAD, if you will, who are entrepreneurs in residence, and they act as mentors for students. And it's not metered. It's not like you can only have 2 hours or something. All we tell our students is don't shoot the breeze. go with a concrete set of questions, but it's not metered. And because we have a lot of them, they're, domains expertise, geographic expertise, functional area expertise, all of that. And of course, you have the Career Management Center, because part of learning how to become an entrepreneur is to maybe intern with a fast growing company, maybe even take a slightly lower than expected salary from joining a McKinsey or a Goldman Sachs to learn from a fast growing young company who may not offer the same kind of remuneration. So the Career Management Center is another important aspect as well. So two prongs. One is the academic side, and then there is a co-curricular side. Academic side is spearheaded by faculty. The co-curricular side is spearheaded by students often, and also research centers. But it's very important, I think, to avoid a culture that it's cool to become an entrepreneur. Students should become entrepreneurs for the right reasons. So not because their friends are doing it. It's often a terrible idea to go into entrepreneurship, right? So while it's important to sort of give these tools, it's also important to avoid a culture where it's cool to become an entrepreneur. And specifically in terms of looking at the potential of entrepreneurship cells in universities in the Indian context, I had a couple of ideas around this, and I'm happy to discuss with the other panelists and the audience. So I think about them as, these cells should provide opportunities for collaboration between people with diverse knowledge. Because in India, we don't have universities like in the Western world. Instead, we have like engineering college, a design school, a management school, and they're not always under the same university. It's very important for these e-clubs to facilitate meeting of students across these disciplines. So it has to be in an engineering college, they should try their best to reach out to people with National Institute of Design and with the management school, because it's super important. If you think about what is involved in starting a business, there are fundamentally three kind of broad expertise areas. There's obviously the technology aspect, and I'm very broad here. I'm not talking of software. It could be civil engineering for a civil engineering startup. It could be life sciences or agri-tech or whatever it is. There's a core technology. There is a design element, which is so important. And National Institute of Design is opening up so many new campuses. Can't emphasize enough the importance of design for startups, and of course the management side of it, which is what I teach. But these three domains, technology-based, design, and management has to come together. So the e-cell has to provide opportunities for collaboration between people with these kinds of backgrounds. And the second thing is, and going back to what Dr. Shukla talked about barriers and disapproval from friends and family, or you don't know what is involved, learning from the experience of successful entrepreneurs. Alumni will have a great reason to come back to your institution to share, right? So actively connecting with alumni from your institution, arranging for invited talks, brainstorming sessions. How do you come up with ideas? What boot camps around how do you develop ideas, or hackathons, and the kinds of things that Dr. Shukla spoke about are very important. Trying to develop an entrepreneurship in residence, entrepreneurs in residence program is another important step. It doesn't cost much. In INSEAD, it's purely voluntary activity. We do not pay. It is just an opportunity for alumni to give back and for people in the local ecosystem to give back. So implementing these ideas around providing opportunity for collaboration between people with diverse knowledge and learning from the experience of successful entrepreneurs, those ideas, how you implement them depends very much on the specific institution. If we have time later, I'm very happy to ask our audience to think about their own institution and think about which of the ingredients are, kind of missing. Is it design? Is it not? Is it management? Is it in technology? And what ideas do you have to gain access to those missing ingredients, and also the learning from experience? So maybe Sana, later you could tell us. I was thinking that audience can just write in the chat box their college name and what is missing and what suggestions they have. Perhaps you could share it with the group later on. because it's very important to start thinking in terms of concrete actions. Let me stop right here, and then we can take questions later. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Mr. Visa. Next up, before we start with the moderated discussion, Mr. Lee, if you'd like to give your opening remarks.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me with this great opportunities and with a lot of other scholars that already have been experienced a lot in these industries. So I think it just based on like just 15 minutes after listening what they have been studying and working, I've been already learning a lot. So it was really great to hear. I'd like to actually make some remarks, kind of the extended version of what Professor Wilson kind of announced it. That kind of like the students need to have a little bit of the space for the safe to have more experiment. So I'd like to share just a few slides that I prepared. And I hope this will actually give us a little bit of the more clearer points that I wanted to highlight. Everyone can see the screens?
Yes,
Good.
We can see your slides.
So I'd like to highlight just a few things that are related to the university cell that we are discussing today to help students to become more successful entrepreneurs, and eventually they will hopefully become some venture capitalist or angel investor to come back to help the other students. To do so, I'd like to bring our attention to the importance of the failure, when they have it and how they have it. So universities are often regarded only as like R&D places where provided the new IPs or the patent mostly, but I believe nowadays we have more ways to involve in startup ecosystems. University can be their incubators, and also they can be a consistent mentorships and advisory group. With these ideas, I'd like to highlight just the two aspects why university-based entrepreneurial cell could be a great addition to these ecosystems. University, the failure of any project that student can experience while they are in the university will stay safe. Kind of like the same argument that Professor Wilson announced it earlier. I mean, no harm to students much, but to give them a more valuable lessons and growth story. I'm not just saying this is not just like a benign story, like every success has its own failure, but look at the movie industries. You can probably see this all looks familiar because it's actually made a great success in the history. And according to the organization ecology studies, this increased the number of the success, this kind of the great success solely based on the number of the failure. So when we are actually having the pile up the number of increased failure, we can actually benefit it from that to have more chances to have the greater success. So it means the more the failure is actually providing the greater chances and greater resources to those entrepreneurial ecosystem at all, and the students can probably have those kind of very valuable experience while they are actually in the university. Although the failure is safe for students, it is not always easy for students when they are actually aiming for greater good than the profit itself, which we can sometimes call the social entrepreneurship. Of course, nowadays the boundary between the socials and entrepreneurship became a little bit blurred, and I hope to believe that many of the attempts are in a great hope to serve the better and greater social needs. But success in social realm can be very difficult to measure and define. In other words, this can sometimes make a failure a little bit difficult to define. And that's why sometimes the mediocre measures, stated actions, in turn, take away the opportunity for students to learn from their failure or the past. That's why we didn't probably hear much of the success nor the failure stories in social enterprise compared to what we usually have more in those IT startups or like Silicon Valleys. The university cell can have those benefits on that, clearly giving them a timeout between while they were students and their career after. Another great example, kind of related to that, I believe is like a Hurt prize. The students need a failure, but they don't need to fail on the same things that others already did. So the Hertz Prize is a great example, but not only because it actually gives out the $1 million prize every year, but because it's year-long competitions to build their ideas through the process, which is happening all around the world for students to experience almost perhaps like more than thousands of the failure every year. The merit is not only for the final winners, but all those clear failed cases that has been pushed to the limit, and then they learn from each other why it is totally failed. So I hope we can actually help the students to get fail more in a very safe environment, kind of situated in those university cells. And we can help them to fail safe and fail smart, so they can actually have more success after they graduate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee.
All right.
Right, we can now begin with our moderated discussion. My first question is to Ms. Wilson. So B schools are perceived to hold the key to develop and bring forth entrepreneurs who in turn produce more jobs and wealth for the entire nation. We would like to know your thoughts on the same. Do you think that business schools are such a natural breeding ground for entrepreneurship?
Thank you. And that gives me the opportunity to build upon what Dr. Visa said earlier. It's really a combination. Business school students are good at management, but they're not always the entrepreneurs. A lot of the entrepreneurs are actually coming from tech universities, scientific universities, design schools. So you really need the combination of these talents across these different disciplines. And that's why it's very important to have these connections between different parts of the universities, or even partnerships between universities, different universities, and at least in these student cells to make sure you have the right mix of students, because that creates the breeding ground for entrepreneurship. I would say it's the business students last that are the entrepreneurs. It's the scientists, the technologists, the design, the creative design students. It's those people that might be more likely to become entrepreneurs. But of course, they're very passionate about their idea and their technology, and they need the help of the business students that can help bring the business strategy and the business management and the financing into the mix.
Absolutely. I actually had a similar question for Mr. Visa as well. Your experience has been focused on business schools. Do you believe that B schools provide enough knowledge where one can learn to be a successful entrepreneur, or is it just sort of helpful in creating a base?
Sorry, Sana, could you just repeat the question, please? And you can just call me Bala. That's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yes, Bala. So I had a similar question for you. So your experience has been on business schools. Do you believe that B schools provide enough knowledge where one can learn to be a successful entrepreneur, or is it just sort of helping in creating a base?
So, good question, Sana. And I want to go back to something which I mentioned earlier. I think it is in a place like India. Okay, I'm just talking about our audience here. India, if you look at it, I studied in IIM Calcutta a long time ago. I had almost no work experience, zero work. I had 1 year of work experience. All my colleagues had 0 years of experience. That's kind of similar even today. Okay, so I think it's very hard, honestly speaking, for business school courses to teach people to become entrepreneurs. They can give some exposure, they can talk about things, and I would say it's just the essential basic toolkit. If you think about it, the ideal, if you had infinite resources, the best way to learn entrepreneurship is to actually be an understudy for a very successful entrepreneur. But obviously that's not a scalable thing, right? So there is something to be said about learning academic concepts and frameworks which can share, give a broader idea about what is involved and what are the pitfalls and so forth. So if you think about academic, and I'm talking to you as a researcher as well, I think academic frameworks are very useful and helpful. They don't, however, provide any kind of a magic recipe. Okay, so nobody has magic recipes. So people can tell, what are all from past experience and some frameworks, and that's helpful to guide thinking. But I'm actually a proponent of people are right after graduation should become entrepreneurs if they strongly feel they are pursuing a very promising idea and they have the knowledge to do something. Typically, that will come about, I guess, from having worked either as an intern, having some bare amount of organizational experience, and then the knowledge base helps you there. But beyond that, I would say people should become entrepreneurs when they're ready for it. And oftentimes, and given the data that we have on entrepreneurship as a broad phenomena, most successful entrepreneurs tend to be in their late 30s, believe me. Okay, it is not the college dropout who went to, created Microsoft. For every one Microsoft or Google, there are 100,000 that you don't observe, right? They just died without creating anything valuable. So we tend to get biased too much by success stories. So the typical successful entrepreneurs tend to be much older and they've gained a lot of experience. In other words, they made mistakes with other people's money, and then they sort of found a promising idea. So I am not a proponent for every student to become an entrepreneur after graduation. That's a terrible idea. People should become entrepreneurs when they feel ready for it. Sometimes it's right after graduation. Sometimes it is further down the road.
Absolutely. My next question is to Dr. Shukla. Given your academic training in psychology, what would you say are some of the key ingredients in creating an entrepreneurial culture?
I think there was some disturbance. I couldn't listen to you clearly. Could you please repeat your question?
Apologies. Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Not very clearly.
There's a bit of distortion at your end, Sana. Maybe.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, I think
it's good now. It's good now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. So, Dr. Shukla, given that your academic training has been in psychology, what would you say are some of the key ingredients in creating an entrepreneurial culture?
In my opening remarks, I said that entrepreneurship is more a matter of mindset. And that's the background for entrepreneurship. Psychology in entrepreneurship. If we are able to understand entrepreneurial behavior, the kind of virtues, the psychological attributes that the person possesses, and if we are able to inspire, motivate, develop some of those values, acumen, I think that will certainly help creating an entrepreneurial society. This is what we have done it because entrepreneurship is a different subject, and I fully agree with Bala. I was listening to him, and each and every word I fully agree with him. He said that it is not that colleges only make you entrepreneur. That is not essential. If you have that entrepreneurship, if you have that what people call generally fire in the belly, if you have that, and if you get the right kind of opportunities, if you enter into a college or the university where you have right kind of mentors, professors, teachers, those who can help you, those who can guide you, because entrepreneurship curriculum is it's a composition of knowledge, skill, and aptitude. So building that right kind of aptitude is equally important like building that skill. If you have that right aptitude, knowledge and skill building will take place. So that is more important. And there are certain, if you look at the McLeod's theory, there are certain attributes which people say that positively correlated with entrepreneurship, the way they think, their achievement, autonomy, drive, achievement, motivation kind of thing, their belief in themselves, like internal locus of control, their moderate, calculated risk-taking, their drive and determination, and all these are related with psychology. So I believe that having an understanding of behavioral science, not just psychology, but behavioral science, it could be psychology, it could be sociology, it could be anthropology, All these will certainly help you understanding the dimension, and accordingly you can design program, you can facilitate, you can guide, you can motivate, you can work on creating right kind of policies for the societies to become entrepreneurial. So this is what my take is. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Next, I'd like to ask Mr. Lee, since again you have a vast background on this topic. Can you elaborate a little bit on how sociology is linked to entrepreneurship?
Well, I can talk for next 40 minutes, but I'll make it short. Yeah, so I believe there are like some social contexts we believe is kind of highly connected to, the entrepreneurial motivations. People have a different access to the resource, and definitely we can think about those like some structural aspects that are genuinely prohibiting some students to joining this kind of opportunities. But at the same time, let's put it this way. I am working in an NIU Abu Dhabi campus. Usually we welcome students from more than 80 different countries. So whenever I have a students, like a 10 student or 20 students in my class, usually I have 17 different nationalities from every part of the world, which is amazing. But at the same time, and it means like they are from everywhere and every different socio-economic background. So usually, whatever the example that I choose, and sometimes I'm sure the major portion of the students might not be already familiar with those examples. But one of the most interesting things that I learned from the students in my class was nothing is obvious and none of the challenges are taken for granted. So whenever they think certain things are obvious for their society and their culture and their industry, something is totally can be an opportunity for other students in other contexts and other areas. So that's what I learned, kind of the fascinating in a way, and then also try to encourage students to discuss kind of the similar thing or the different things, or even those kind of obvious things for them to discuss one another. Because once they actually have these kind of resources that university or the university incubators are providing, I believe these kind of different social contexts or capitals can be a gift for them to see what others cannot see. So to think and then differently, and then they can actually come up with the different solutions to the same problems, kind of the benefit to other people. I mean, it may not be the right answer, direct answer for about like a connection between the sociologies and entrepreneurship, but I think this type of different social context that we're actually dealing maybe is actually getting us to answer kind of the different questions in a different aspect. So help to students to get actually better be prepared, and then even make the better contributions to the rest of the society. So of course, the kind of increased access and encouraged motivation is still needed from kind of the institutions that we are working, but I think it is pretty helpful, especially when we are dealing with a lot of different aspects of the social sectors.
Definitely. I'd like to circle back to Ms. Wilson. So students learn a great deal by explaining their ideas to others and by participating in activities that in which they can learn from their peers essentially. So how can peer learning be leveraged to promote entrepreneurship in universities?
Great. Thank you so much for that. And actually, I wanted to start by building on something that Bala had said earlier. He said, don't make entrepreneurs cool. And I would expand on that and say, don't make entrepreneurs heroes. Don't put them on a platform, because that scares students. It makes them think that it's something for somebody else. And what Bala was saying about entrepreneurs in residence, getting alumni from the school that are maybe more like the students, because they were students not so long ago, or maybe longer ago, but they maybe are more similar, and they can be better role models for the students than the the Bill Gates and the Richard Bransons or whoever of the world that seems unattainable. So that's sort of a first thing I wanted to put in there based on the earlier discussion. In terms of learning from each other, it's related because I think students can learn best from each other in terms of sharing experiences, sharing different contexts, as we heard from Professor Lee a minute ago. People all come in with their own views, their own experiences, and also if you have students in these cells that come from different disciplines as well, then there really can be a lot of learning that can take place between the students. So I think that's really important. And it's also a safe learning because they're not worried about being graded. They're not worrying about being judged. They can learn in a safe environment, a safe and open environment. I also think that this idea of having prizes and opportunities where students can compete and work together in teams and learn from other teams is really important. It's a very important part of the process because they're also getting to pilot, but they're working together in teams and they're learning from each other. I'm involved in a new foundation that's being launched soon. It's called the Earth Foundation. And actually, they're going to be working with schools and universities, and they'll have prizes and awards for student and faculty teams around innovation and entrepreneurship related to environment. So they're looking at the whole ecosystem of schools and how you build the pipeline then and already get young people thinking about entrepreneurship and building that pipeline for the universities. And then they're thinking about the incubator and a fund. In their case, it's focused around environment. But I think these initiatives, whether it's that or the Holt Prize that was mentioned earlier, or these other initiatives where students get to work together and learn from each other by actually learning by doing, I think is really important.
Definitely. Next, Dr. Shukla. So EDII has taken multiple steps to retain its relevance as the only institute of its kind in the country by continuing to create several new initiatives that sort of catapult entrepreneurship training to the next level. Can you elaborate a little on the curriculum reform and redesign over the years to sort of have this scaled in the mindsets of the entrepreneurs?
Very good. So far EDI programs are concerned, we have postgraduate program, 2 postgraduate programs, PGDM, which is the equivalent to MBA in entrepreneurship, and PGDM IEV, Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Venture Development. Both are AICTE approved courses, plus fellow program in management, which is PhD equivalent, doctoral equivalent, or at doctoral level. In this program, we have been from time to time, I think very regularly we have been revising our curriculum to suit the requirements of the changing interest and the scenario of the need of the hour. That is what we have been doing. And our curriculum is based on the critical review of curricula of higher learning institutions. Let me quote my another research study which I conducted for Indian universities. About 40 universities curricula, in-depth curricula, I analyzed that what is the focus they are providing for specific input, whether it is information or behavioral or business opportunity identification or project report preparation or strategic initiatives kind of thing. And I found that in large number of institutions, it is based on the availability of the faculty rather than what our students require, unfortunately. I'm not suggesting that every course should have a similar focus, but usually, even if they feel that we need to provide a project report and business plan, DPR related training and guidance, but if the faculty is not there, they usually focus more on the management or the information or There are some institutions in the name of entrepreneurship, they've been teaching only the schemes of financial institutions and the government. That's not entrepreneurship. We need to have that curricula. If you look at some of the well-known curricula from INSEAD or Harvard or Babson or Carnegie Mellon, you will find that they try to build up that entrepreneurial fervor, entrepreneurial thoughts and action. And that is why it is not just aptitude, but also the skill building, identifying the right kind of business opportunities and converting it into a viable document, viable, feasible document which they can apply. So at our institute, we have been doing it. We also have milestone-based approach. Earlier, our course was first 10 years we ran as 1 year course. And we found that even after graduating, the students were finding it difficult to immediately implement their businesses. Some of them, they said that we would like to work for some time, somewhere, what they call that incubational placement. And then after a careful review of our own program, for last 12, 13 years, we expanded it to 2 years to accommodate milestone-based approach. We have identified all those milestones which a student after graduating would need to be mastered. And we have introduced in the course itself, first year and the second year, that what kind of what you call URL development, website development, or partnership agreement, or prototype development, or opening a PAN card, TAN card, or any other formalities that they need to understand after once they enter. How can they be helped for such things while they are studying? And this has helped us a lot. Today we have our alumni, 78%. I repeat again, 78% of EDII alumni, they are into business. Either they have created their own companies, or even if they have joined family businesses, they have made it grow. So it's all because of the applied methodology that we have. We have a simulation-based approach. Before you actually invest and lose money in real life, you can do so in computer-based simulations. Bala would be aware of all those simulation-based exercises which we have for specifically new ventures. That's very, very important. I'm also happy, let me tell you, that for Government of India, Ministry of HRD, UGC, they were reviewing entrepreneurship curricula, and they also found certain requirements, and based on that, we helped them develop 3-year curricula, again focusing on the judicious mix of knowledge, skills, and aptitude. And we start much before our postgraduate programs. We start our curricula. I mean, we believe that entrepreneurs need to be trained at much younger age. So catching them young. So we have summer camp on entrepreneurial stimulation for 12 to 16-year-old children at our campus. 1-week program. Summer camp for entrepreneurial youth for higher secondary to college going youth. And we get students from all over the country, residential programs. Every summer we organize. We try to build that entrepreneurial values, entrepreneurial acumen, entrepreneurial leadership. And that certainly has a major role to play in their foundation for entrepreneurial career development. So curriculum is very, very important. Methodology is important. Role of teachers, trainers, mentors, those who are there, that is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla. And just building up on that, Bala, I have a similar question for you. So again, entrepreneurship curriculum has evolved over the years. Can you tell us a little bit about how this curriculum works at INSEAD?
Thanks, Anna. So thank you, Dr. Shukla, as well, for a really insightful comment on what EDI is doing. So I can talk about INSEAD's curriculum, and I already touched upon it, but I should do that by pointing out, first of all, that INSEAD is a different context, right? Because our MBA students have about 6 years of work experience before they show up. So they're about 30 years old, and they already have a good idea of organizational life, work life, professional life, and then they come and do a 1-year intense program. Also, traditionally, the INSEAD MBA program was geared towards mainly, getting executives to work either in big companies or working directly in big companies as employees, or advising big companies through consultancies like McKinsey or through financial services like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, those kind of investment banks. So much of our students continue to still go into consulting or in or banking, but then there is a increasing percentage of people who are today finishing INSEAD MBA and then trying to launch a venture. Part of it has to do with the fact that the economics of launching new ideas has changed dramatically, right? Over the last decade, right? Over the last comparing 2000 with 2020, it's completely changed. For about $50,000 to $100,000, you can actually, for pre-seed funding of that kind of money, you can try out your idea. At least you will, get it out of your system. You have an idea, you want to try it, and you can try it. So with $100,000, at least you know if it's not working, right? So that's an important reason why I think there's more and more students doing entrepreneurship right after graduation at INSEAD. It's still a single-digit number, and I'm quite happy it's that way, frankly. But later on, they do end up becoming entrepreneurs. To come back to the coursework, because we have a very broad definition of entrepreneurship, we just don't focus just on the new venture thing. Because everyone, when in this panel or even in the audience, if we think about entrepreneurship, the first thing that comes to our mind is launching a new venture, Flipkart, or any of the Big Basket, or all these big names that we can hear, right, in India with like unicorn billion-dollar valuations. But I think it's useful to take a broader definition of entrepreneurship, I think, which is the definition that we started off with in the beginning when Dr. Shukla was talking about his data, which is anyone who's self-employed. Sometimes it may be for growth, or it could be for lifestyle, and it could be rejuvenating a family business. It could also be a corporate entrepreneurship. So we have focused courses on each of these different definitions, if you will. And interestingly, for a business school, building on what Karen spoke about earlier, business school graduates are typically very useful when a company is scaling up. A company is at $50 million revenue and needs to go to $250 million, they would start hiring certain types of profiles, which is what a business school kind of background would really help in putting in place structures and systems and organizational culture and policies and structure, which will help a startup grow. So many of our students end up becoming CXOs or fast-growing companies, and there's a very healthy ecosystem, and definitely in Silicon Valley, but that kind of ecosystem is slowly emerging in India. It's still going to take a long time. It's in Singapore, for example, it's not there. In India, I think we have much larger ecosystem just in terms of sheer volume. But that's in that kind of a goal, that kind of a well-developed ecosystem, a business school like INSEAD, because it's a standalone business school with experienced people coming in, we find a chunk of our students going into senior executive positions in fast-growing companies. But we also have a lot of engineers who join us, German and French engineers and Indian engineers. They end up going and starting companies directly as well from just a classic new venture. So we have a bunch of courses related to all of these. So we have about 18 or 20 electives, academic electives. But more important, or along with the academic electives, there are a whole bunch of other activities which are equally important, right? The entrepreneur in residence and all of those things. So I think we have a good kind of a mix for INSEAD's specific situation, which is kind of unusual and not directly comparable to the kind of institutions we have in India today.
Right. Mr. Lee, just coming back to the topic of social entrepreneurship, it is definitely taking center stage, but techno-solutionism is being used for solving these social problems now, which is essentially that there's a growing expectation that technology can solve everything, and sort of there's an increasing obsession with getting these solutions via the right codes or the programs or robots. So what are your thoughts on that?
I I believe Elon Musk would say yes to your answer in a simple way. So that's a very interesting question, and actually I've been thinking a lot about that. So we used to think those like high-tech startups and social entrepreneurships are very different. I mean, I learned from the school when I would learn about the social entrepreneurships and entrepreneurship IT, they were just totally different subjects, and their funding resources are different. The way of the marketing is different, and how to even getting the people to come to join the organization was very different. But look around, like many of the important changes to our society is actually triggered by those small, high-tech oriented startups and impact on our society. I mean, how could we survive this COVID pandemic without Netflix, right? And nowadays, the Clubhouse, there is like a new platforms coming in, and then everybody just started chatting on without looking at each other. And so I have a huge belief in the rise of those new technologies and how fast they are changing, which I feel sometimes hard to follow. But at the same time, that's why I kind of having a little bit more and stronger belief in our students, because the students are learning fast and not just using those technology, but they are thinking together with technologies, and genuinely they will actually look for the solutions without even thinking about the new technologies available or not. So I believe, of course, I don't expect every answers from the technologies, like the example what the Facebook tried in 2015 with a free Wi-Fi balloon in Africa. I mean, it was a little bit of like a very unique example. Then we can come up with like available technologies. So I think we need to probably come up with the smart ideas, cope with where technology cannot reach or where technology can actually answer. So there are like some different questions I believe the technology can actually answer better. And then probably the student can actually come up with a little bit of better and smart ideas, how they can twist these technologies into the different ideas. So using available technology into different area could work in many cases. So perhaps not even just we are thinking about like a robotics or like machine learning or AI, even those just available technologies, now they're using just this, the smartphone and GPS and everything, can even challenge some of those very important social issues. For example, the UAE had a huge campaigns about the reducing food waste. The Abu Dhabi's and Dubai, many hotels has a famous their brunch and like some gourmet dinners, and usually they are actually wasting a lot of food without fully consumed by the consumer like a daily basis. But at the same time, here there are like many people who are actually suffer from getting the good and quality healthy food for their kind of different levels of the wage and incomes. So one student come up and they actually brought an idea, just bring up those like web pages, like app. So this hotel kind of consign that whenever they have this kind of food left over, which is untouched or like can be sanitized, because those leftover food should be only consumed on a same day. It cannot be just refrigerated because it can harm the people who will probably eat the next day or in a few days later. So that's why they actually created this app to connect that to where the food wastes are actually happening, and then directly deliver this food to the labor camp or those people who are actually in need. It was actually very good ideas because we are living in a kind of very small cities, and those hotels are actually situated in many different places. It was just using whatever the technology is available with a greater mindset, just to try to help the other people in needs, but at the same time reducing those waste that we are trying to help the environment better. So I think yes, technology can be an answer for many things, and I'd be happy to see some more new and like interesting technology to surprise me in the next few years. But at the same time, we just need to connect the dots, not creating a whole new platform for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'd like to come back on the main topic of our discussion now. So, Ms. Wilson, given that you...
I think at the current, just
Sorry.
wanted to chip in. No? I'm sorry. I thought that Karen wanted to say
Sorry,
something. Ms.
anybody
Wilson.
has to say something?
I was going to say something, but I think you're coming back to me, so I'll wait. Please go ahead.
Oh, no worries. If you have something to say, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to build upon what Dr. Lee was saying. There are different types of entrepreneurship. Not everything has to be high tech. It used to be that to be that hero entrepreneur, you had to be a high tech entrepreneur. So you had to know about technology and science. You had to really have deep tech experience. But technology is also enabling a lot of entrepreneurship. So you can have, as in the examples that Dr. Lee gave, you can have entrepreneurs that have low-tech businesses, but they have tech-enabled businesses. So they can scale and they can be high growth because technology is helping to enable their business model. You can also have high growth businesses that don't have technology involved at all. So there are a lot of different types, and also getting back to social entrepreneurship, the interest in social issues has grown, and in particularly students are very interested in environment and social issues. So not only in terms of when they think about becoming entrepreneurs, but also as they think about investing. So we're starting to see a blurring of the lines. As Dr. Lee said, it used to be you had the social entrepreneurs that were almost doing charity work on one side, and then you had these high growth firms. But now we have this whole spectrum of entrepreneurs, many of whom are trying to think about developing solutions to environmental and social issues as a business model, not just as charity. So I just wanted to point that out, as well as the role of technology.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. If anybody else would like to have a go on the same topic, please go ahead. Okay, great. Then I circle back Ms. Wilson again. Given that you've been a part of various business schools as a fellow and as a student, what are some of the models adopted by these entrepreneurship centers that have been observed by you? And do you think that these can be replicated in India?
Thank you. Well, I think the most powerful have been the labs. At Harvard Business School, it was the innovation lab that they set up. And that innovation lab, while it was set up at the business school, it was open to students from all across the university, which it sounds a bit like some of the schools in India. There used to be a big divide between these different parts of the university. And in fact, the business school was even on the other side of the river from the rest of the university. So no one ever went to the business school until this Harvard Innovation Lab was set up. So that's been a very big success. Another model that we've seen is the creative destruction labs. I think it was first set up, this concept was first set up at Waterloo University in Canada, if I believe, and it spread to some other universities in Canada. And now a number of universities around the world, I don't know how many, are implementing these creative destruction lab models. I'm aware because Oxford Business School has launched one, and I'm a little bit involved in that. And I know that there's also one in Paris. So I think these models, again, which are very action-oriented, very experiential learning-oriented, putting teams of students together where they can do peer learning and actually work together on building ideas around certain kinds of startups is really, really powerful.
Thank you for that. Next, Bala, again, just along the same lines, how can institutions and colleges in tier 3 cities establish these e-cells that have very limited resources, but they want to sort of drive the startup culture?
Well, that's a very interesting question, very tricky question. I don't have an answer to that, but um, I think even outside of the big established engineering schools like the IITs or BITS, NITs, and then you have, so apart from the top, out of the, if you remove the top 50 engineering colleges in India, I'm not even sure in the other engineering colleges what is going on in terms of actively uh, promoting the idea of entrepreneurship, uh, and let alone tier two or tier three towns. I think my feeling is maybe the kind of work that EDI is doing, or I know that, for example, there's an organization called Udyam, which has been started by a gentleman called Mekin. So Mekin was a successful entrepreneur. He was the CTO he was employee number one for Flipkart, I think, and then left. He moved on to social enterprise. To go back to Kang San's point, he launched Udyam, which is Udyam is trying to provide skills for both the local kirana store or the small tea shop on basics of management techniques to help them grow, and also taking curriculums into going back to what Dr. Shukla mentioned earlier, to grade 9 to high schools and also to ITIs, technical institutions. They're working with governments directly. So I believe that, for example, the Delhi government has implemented this program 2 years ago, year ago, I think, on providing an entrepreneurial mindset curriculum for high school kids in Delhi, in the government schools. I think they started, I forget now the details, whether they start in grade 9 or 10, or I think it's 10 and 11. I might be mistaken, but it's a 2-year program, and that has been very successful. It's spreading across some other states in India. In addition, I believe Udyam is also working with the Haryana government for these ITIs to again develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So my feeling is a collaborative approach between social entrepreneurs, which is such an important point that Kangsan made, who are now coming up with trying to promote entrepreneurship in India, apart from institutions like EDI, I guess. Collaborating with them is the way forward, because I think there has to be some capacity building in tier 2 or tier 3 towns. If you're a arts college, it's really almost like beyond your imagination. Oh, can I also do this? They probably don't have an alumni base enough to connect back, but they still need to have some other examples of people who are coming in with the fire in the belly, to go back to what Dr. Shukla said, right? So who have been successful, who have been just like them, right? So I think there's a great opportunity, and there are a lot of social enterprises. Udyam is the first thing that comes to mind, because I happen to be involved with working with Mekin, although the Corona pandemic has thrown a spanner in the works. So I know that there are others. There's another one called, there's an organization called One Bridge, started again, another Bangalore-based successful entrepreneur who's ventured into social enterprise, Madan Padaki. Madan is doing this stuff around creating rural entrepreneurs, right? And creating entrepreneurs in every village. So they are the kind, and he also has another, he obviously knows Mekin, and they work together on other things. But I believe there's a critical mass of people like that, who are successful entrepreneurs, who built companies, become wealthy, and want to give back. And they want to give back by teaching people across India on how to become entrepreneurs. And today, India has now got the ecosystem in terms of the resources, the funding ecosystem. So you need not just a great one entrepreneur with a great idea. You need team. You need like different multiple skills, complementary skills. You need people who can provide money, seed money, angel investors, Then you need like institutional capital. You need to have big companies who are willing to work with small companies. You need to have an exit path for companies to be sold or to IPO. All of those are coming into place, and the labor market, which we spoke about earlier, about talent. So I think even in these tier 2, tier 3 cities, my hunch would be to just go out there and collaborate with organizations like Udhyam or with OneBridge, and these are just two that I know of. There must be many more like this, and get them to evangelize entrepreneurship, if you want a better word.
Thank you, Bala, for your thoughts over there. Dr. Shukla, coming back to you. So most e-cells may focus on developing technical and managerial skills, which are important, but they can make the learning process one-dimensional. So what do you think can be done to focus on the behavior aspect of it?
Let me start with where Bala left, about the ecosystem. This is the perfect time for creating entrepreneurship cells or introducing entrepreneurship activities, or for students venturing into entrepreneurial career. Lots of initiatives are there. Startup India, many people have heard, Make in India. Stand Up India, one thing which I would like to mention here, Stand Up India supports women from any caste community, creed in India, and those who are from marginalized sections like SC, ST and others. Every bank branch is mandated to support 2 enterprises in a year. And until recently, until this budget, the requirement for margin money by the entrepreneurs was 25%, which has been reduced to 10%, which is a big boost for those who want to start their enterprises. So all those who are on campuses looking for entrepreneurial career, I would say that this is the right time. Lots of other initiatives are there, whether it is Swachh Bharat Mission or a Digital India or several other initiatives where they can benefit from it. So far technology is concerned, certainly technology is an enabler and it has helped startup initiatives. But if you look at the NASSCOM report, 2020 NASSCOM report, NASSCOM says that 53% enterprises, startup enterprises, are in non-technology domain. They're not in technology domain. They are in tourism, they are in education, training, food processing, organic farming, and several other initiatives. So there is a need to think beyond technology. If technology is there, fine. But even if you are from non-technology background, you can still do that. Incubation centers. Until 5 years back, there were hardly 50 incubation centers in the country. 2020 NASSCOM report says that there are 520 active functional incubation centers in the country. And these incubation centers are supposed to help those who want to start their own enterprises. Niti Aayog, Atal Innovation Mission, has been supporting for the cause of tinkering labs for the schools and incubation centers. So ecosystem is being put in place. And I would say that the institution should take initiative and try to introduce entrepreneurship activities with or without any cell. If cell is there, fine, but they should not wait until the cell is established formally. They should start organizing entrepreneur interactions, preferably from their own alumni, because that will have greater demonstration impact. They can organize visit to small scale industries where the students can view the process of creation and get an inspiration that if they can do, why can't we? Such things are very, very important. Some focused events like technology demonstration with help from financial institutions and technology bodies, R&D laboratories. And this is precisely a beginning, in the beginning, an EDCell has to do. And I'm sure that they can do it. Behavioral aspect, I have already talked about earlier. So it is the responsibility of the institutions to organize events so that they can enthuse, they can motivate, they can inspire their students to explore entrepreneurial career options. Because we believe that everybody has entrepreneurship. The degree might differ. Someone may have little greater than other person. So how can we identify that and convert it into establishment of a real enterprise? That's the challenge. And I'm sure those who are vibrant institutions, dynamic institutions, they would have taken a step, or they would be willing to do it. Collaboration approach is the right approach. What Bala has said, that there are established institutions, and I'm sure that even if they approach any good institution, including IIMs, IITs, and other national institutes of technology, those who have established incubation centers or ED centers, they would certainly be willing to mentor those who want to take this first step. So for EDI is concerned, we have been doing it, and anybody willing to set up will be willing to share our knowledge, because we have our all India presence. We have our regional offices and branch offices in almost every state we have. So wherever they want, our faculty, our staff, our colleagues will help them, and we do not expect anything. I mean, we would be willing to share knowledge for their advantage rather than for any commercial advantage to ourselves. Certainly not. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shukla. Just one last question for Mr. Lee before I go on to my closing question for the entire panel. And this is again in the context of social entrepreneurship. What would you say are some of the methods of modeling social entrepreneurship that could be applied in the Indian context?
That's very challenging questions. And not because the question itself is not important, but because based on my limited knowledge about the Indian context too. So I try to ask in a different way. So based on what we have been discussed so far, we've been talking about those successful models, successful ways, and how even the differences between social entrepreneurships and those like high growth entrepreneurships are becoming similar. Then probably I can put it, do we really need Indian context specific models? Or is there any model that we can probably apply into many different regions? Of course, I know this may not sound very clear in answering the questions, but I think the question itself is actually bringing me a very important and an also interesting question to myself, is because when I was actually giving them the students assignments or like talking with them about the projects, I always tried to make them to think about like a scale up their questions. So for example, like when you are looking for the certain model for India, probably we can only come up with the very country-specific, context-oriented answers. But I hope that to let the students make them a little bit, model big, or to serve the larger community. So tackle small problem, but try to find a way that serve the many areas. Even maybe if you can find some kind of the similar challenges or like some common problems across the world, maybe they can actually find an answer to a larger community than only specific to India or tier 2 or tier 3 city that we discussed earlier. So India itself is a large enough and very complicated society, so I believe that probably you all tend to find some very even the context-specific answers. But I believe the more merit would probably come when the model can go more than certain regions or maybe the certain countries. So serve the same needs in other countries or other part of the world. So I hope we can hope to find, of course, maybe we cannot find the great model for now, but we hope to find and encourage students to find some social problems that they can tackle, not because this is from India, but to benefit India. So they can probably find the same problem that actually occur in Africa or other countries or the Korea or the Japan, then probably they can find a solution that can even benefit to India. So when they consider those kinds of differences across the world, they can come up with smart ideas. I know, I'm sorry that I cannot answer, but just putting more burden to my students, but I think that's one way to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And very quickly, just my concluding question to the entire panel. So the future graduates are the ones who can actually tackle some of society's most urgent and pressing challenges. So what would you say to the young people who are watching the webinar right now to keep on learning so that they can make their mark on the world? Starting with Ms. Wilson.
Well, we've already covered a lot of ground in the discussion so far, but I think one word that we're missing, and it's really the core for entrepreneurship and for the students, is fun. It's fun to be an entrepreneur, to build your own business, to pursue your own dream. You know, we're talking about a lot of sort of technical things and things you need to do and learn and put in place, but at the end of the day, you're driving your own destiny, and that's really exciting. So good luck to all the students listening.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Bala, on to you now.
So my concluding remarks would be to kind of build on what Karen was saying. It is a lot of fun. It gives you the idea of building something which is yours, whether it occurs as a standalone entity or whether it is occurring within a big company. It does not matter. But developing that reputation as someone who creates something from nothing, that's a very, very nice reputation to have. It may not be for everyone, but it's definitely the best way to kind of try and figure out if this is for you is to learn, preferably by working in an organization and trying to be as entrepreneurial as you can within that organization, and then step out and do your own thing when the time is right. Right? So think about entrepreneurship as creating something from nothing, and it's a skill that can be learned. It requires coursework, but it also requires perhaps working in a firm. But that's the big idea, creating something from nothing.
Thank you. Dr. Shukla, on to you now. What would you like to say to the students who are watching this webinar today?
Today's students are much more informed, much more aware. When they enter our campuses, they would have identified, or some preliminary analysis they would have done about the sector, about the opportunities. What they require is little more, maybe guidance or hand-holding or mentoring. So their potential is enormous. And this is the right time with the ecosystem that earlier we talked about to venture into entrepreneurship. And as Bala said, that really, thanks to Bala, I mean, all these things that you are telling, I'm taking help from your words. He said that be entrepreneur, or because of some reason, if you want to pursue job, be as an entrepreneurial executive, intrapreneur, or corporate entrepreneur. So with entrepreneurship, wherever you are, you will be able to create that difference. And as an entrepreneur, you will have 360-degree view of an organization. So even if you join, you will have a little bit of this function, that function, and that will give you a lot of advantage, a lot of confidence. And that's why I said that entrepreneurship is not just a career vocation. It's a state of mind. It's a life skill, and everybody should give it a try. Thank you.
Definitely, Dr. Shukla. Mr. Lee, on to you.
I thought that Dr. Shukra was actually giving us the great ending remarks, so I think we should stop here. But I just wanted to say the same thing that I brought up earlier. The student, just don't be afraid to fail. I know I grew up in an Asian culture. The fail is not an easy thing to swallow. And that's why I was actually emphasized multiple times, like fail is not the dead end. And that's why you might need to find some good safety net while you're in the university, or to find those institutional help. Just make it as an experiment. Don't say that is a failure, just make it an experiment, and you can move on to the next experiment. And if you're even unsure about like how you can cope with those failures, look around and then just find the new teams. And what I have learned based on my long experience in studying and living abroad, there are many people who actually cherishes and value more about those good story in the failure, other than just like a very benign small success. So I really hope the student can fail with the confidence, with the fun, and then they can come up with the next round with a fully charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And this brings us to the end of this very engaging session. It was really great to hear all of the panelists' thoughts on how universities and colleges can create this vibrant ecosystem and the startup culture in their respective campuses. We thank each and every one of you for joining us today, and to all of the students also watching. And thank you for sharing your insights, which helped us understand the cultural, the social, economic, and psychological underpinnings of entrepreneurship. We hope you enjoyed the session as well. Thank you so much.
Big thanks
Thanks a
to
lot.
Sana Devan for anchoring it very well, so well, and all the distinguished panelists. It's a great learning from each one of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the students
Like-
watching, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I totally agree with Dr. Shukla. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.